Okay. What is a network firewall? When we talk about firewall, we've been hearing firewall a whole lot of this time in our busy schools, networking, we've been hearing firewall. Today, we are diving inside firewall. As you can see from my screen, a network firewall is hardware or software, meaning network firewall, as you know, isn't only the software part, we also have the hardware part that restricts and permits the flow of traffic between networks. A network firewall is hardware or software that restricts and permits the flow of traffic between networks. Basically, when you build your network, you actually should control the flow of information, the flow of requests in that particular network. Now, what are the rules going to govern this particular flow of rules or flow of requests or data in this particular network? What guidelines have you put in place to actually restrict the flow of these traffic between the hosts in this network? Firewalls are responsible for this. They help you, the designer of a network, to provide restrictions among the movement of traffic within a network. Again, firewalls help prevent cyber attacks by enforcing policies that block unauthorized traffic from accessing a secure network. For example, you build a network, you build your own small network. Now you've designed your network. Every network you design follows a simple path or a simple traffic. What are you going to do to allow only those you've defined in a network to access a particular resource in that network? If you don't restrict it, a hacker somewhere will just bump into this network and start tapping for these vital resources. For example, when you create a network for a bank, there is a network connecting the teller, or let me say the client, or let me say those people you go, the cashiers, to the server. That's the back end of which they request. So when you go to the teller, you tell the teller, I'm about to withdraw. So I'm coming to withdraw, let me say 20 cedis from my bank account. The teller would have to send a request to a server. Now, the request being sent is on a network to a server at the back end, going to request permission to withdraw 20 Ghana cedis from your account to you. Now, when the teller sends that request, the server verifies the request and sends a response to the teller before the teller can be able to withdraw your 20 Ghana cedis for you. Now, the person who designed this network for that particular bank made sure the teller is the only authorized one or the only authorized computer or host that can actually make such request on the server, meaning the customer care can't make a request of withdrawal on that server. Here, he enforced protocols. He enforced firewalls on this network that actually restrict certain people from accessing certain resources, or actually restrict certain computers or hosts on a network from unauthorized access of certain resources. So a firewall is important in every network you build. Right. Any question before we move on? Let's continue. In fact, firewalls are designed to limit the flow of traffic between networks. They are often employed between a secure private network and a network with a different security posture, such as the internet. Network firewalls can also be placed throughout a secure private network to reduce the risk of cyber attacks and prevent unauthorized access to sensitive resources. Okay, now, whenever you build a network, whenever you build a network, there is this rules you will set. The last time I show you a network diagram. Now you can see a network in some network. So after this class, they are going to release the last week's practical video. Yes, it's please watch it and build small network with your Cisco packet. Those who have it and those who don't have it, please follow the video and understand how this network is done. I'm trying to find but an app for those using the phones so that you too can benefit from the practical session. For those using the computers having the Cisco packet, your practical video is going to be released tomorrow. By tomorrow you should get it in your channel. Now you will see in a network, when you start connecting a network, each of the computers on a network has a unique IP address. In this unique IP address, they are all linked to a particular service. So we can have mail server, we can have database server, we can have file resources server. So we can have these servers. Now we have computers going to tap resources from these three servers. It is on a network, it is advisable to restrict or to give access to on different levels. Maybe you have an admin on a network. The admin in your structure or in the structure of the network you are designing, the admin has access to all these servers. So let me say, has access to the database, to the email server, to the, let me say, file resources server, the admin. Now, the admin has access to these three resource server. The common, let me say, the common client or the common user, let me use a bank for example. In a bank, we have the branch manager, a branch manager. Now, a branch manager, one, we have the teller there, two, we have the customer care, those you go and make inquiries from. These three people have different access to different server resources on a particular network, on that bank's network. You will see that there is no way you can go to a customer service center or inquiry center to withdraw your money for you. He or she will tell you to go to the teller, meaning he or she doesn't have access, to, let me say, the withdrawal server. Now you go to the teller, trying to engage with the teller, telling the teller your problem. The teller will tell you to kindly go to the customer center and make inquiries there. There means there are protocols that has been implemented that on that particular inquiry, we have a database that can solve that, and that access is only given to the customer people. Now, when you go to the bank and you want to see the branch manager, sometimes it's very difficult to see him because those who see the branch manager are those maybe coming to make investments with a bank, or those coming to make partnership with a bank, or coming to offer them, say, job or something. The branch manager too has his or her own channel on that same network. So you see one particular network, each of them on it, but they have separate access to separate servers. This can serve as a form of firewall. Firewalls are basic rules that limit the flow of traffic within a network. In fact, it is employed in network to actually secure network postures and securities. Firewall prevents unauthorized access from outsiders as intruders. When you build a network structure and you don't implement these firewalls on it, any hacker anywhere will just tap on your network and access the organization resources. So if you design a network, let's say a network for a bank, and you don't implement these security protocols, by the time you realize, the money in all of these accounts are gone. Any question? Right. What does a network firewall actually do? What does it do? In fact, when we say firewall, what does a firewall actually do? Now, network firewalls analyze inbound and outbound network traffic. What do we mean by inbound and outbound network traffic? Take note, when we were starting, I made mention of a network. You are just transmitting data or resources. Now, data coming in, the firewall will analyze the data if it is harmful and if it is coming from a right source, because the firewall knows where in the network should source a data from. Now, it will also analyze an outbound network traffic. So a firewall will also analyze. So someone has requested this amount or this permission to withdraw this amount of money. The firewall is going to trace where this money is going to pass and see if, in fact, it is indeed an authorized teller. If it finds out it is not an authorized teller, that request is going to be denied, meaning it is an intruder or a hacker doing that. In the absence of firewall, there will be chaos in that particular network. The next thing a firewall does is checking for IP addresses. Checking for IP addresses. Now, we all know that in every network we are going to build, in fact, you will see it in the video. Every network we are going to build, the host, the various or the individual computers on this firewall, each of them has an IP address. Take note, as a networking student, you should put it in your mind. Every network you build, the individual host, each of them has an IP address. Now, a firewall check for an IP address of this communicating device on a particular network. The firewall knows the IP address that should interact in the particular network. Should there be a case whereby a foreign IP address enters this network, the firewall is going to block it. Sometimes, those using Windows, you in fact plug in, you in fact plug in your pen drive, or yes, your pen drive, and you realize the Windows security, they will tell you there is an intruder or the pen drive contains something which is unfriendly to your computer. Now, the firewall has detected there is a device, and this device is bringing something or foreign material that is very, let me say, alien to the system you are currently using. This is how the firewall also works in network. It knows the particular of devices that should be accessing the resource in that particular network. So should there be an intruder IP address, it's going to detect it and potentially blocks it from accessing the vital resources the organization has. The next thing is communication protocols. Communication protocols. Now, when you have a firewall in your network, you should understand in networking, it's about communication. You request, you receive. So you are an organization, you are on an organization's network. You request for a data about a particular student from the server. Now, when you send your request, it's going to verify that indeed, actually, the IP or the particular computer you are using for the request is actually authorized to access that particular resource you are accessing. Now, if it is true, it's going to check the communication protocols. In fact, it's going to check what resources you are allowed to check to request. Hence, the resources you are requesting, can it be given to you? The firewall is going to analyze it, and if it is true that indeed you should be allowed to access that particular resource, the firewall is going to give authority or authorize it for you to access that particular resource. That's communication protocols. Content type. Now, the firewall basically stays in the middle of a network. Before a host can get access to a server, you have to pass through a firewall. Now, the firewall will make sure the type of content, the content of the data you are requesting on a particular network, or the content of a data being requested on a particular network with regards to the IP address, is if indeed giving the authority or authorized for you to access that particular data. If it's true, it's going to allow you to access that content. If you are not allowed, there is no way it will give you access to actually take that content type. Right. After analyzing the characteristics of the traffic, the network firewall blocks or allows traffic based on established firewall policy. Now, as I said earlier, the firewall is going to access you, the IP address of you. It's going to read whatever request you've sent, analyze it, compares it to its policy that in fact IP address this is authorized to access data on this server. If it compares it and it says, okay, allow this IP address to access this data, based on that, you are going to be allowed to access a particular data. If not, you are going to be denied. That's the work of a firewall. How does a firewall work? Any questions so far before we proceed? Okay. Now, how does a network firewall work? How does it work? Network firewalls, in fact, enforce policy based on access control mechanisms. What does this mean? When you talk about access control, initially I told you in every network we have levels of entries or accesses. So a client or a teller can't access a server that's only demarcated to an admin. A customer care center or a customer care host can't access a resource that's only demarcated to an admin or only demarcated to a teller. Based on these rules, the firewall is going to work on allow and deny rule sets. So let me say you are a teller, but instead of you to be doing the withdrawal for people, you want a data about an employee. Since you've not been given that, in fact, access, when you try to access a particular resource from, in fact, a particular database you don't have access, you are going to be denied, because the rules given or per the policies defined and given to the firewalls based on this mechanism, meaning you don't have access to a particular server. Note that the firewall is working based on policies that has been defined for it. So every network you are going to build, or every network you build, should at least have firewall that enforces defined policies by the organization to prevent unauthorized access of some certain data or request. Any question? Benefits of network firewall security. What are the benefits of a network firewall security? In fact, a network firewall enforces access privileges to reduce risk. Network firewalls that only allow traffic has been expressly permitted to pass, denied by default, can support zero trust security architectures. Now, when we talk about privileges, these are the access. So earlier, I said when you build a network, in fact, some network have multiple servers that have very different content in each server. Server A might be containing data about the current money available in bank accounts. Server B might be containing information about the employees. Then server C is containing the organization's information. In fact, firewall helps to actually restrict privileges to what they are being defined for. If you are only being given the access to the employee database, there is no way you can access or find your way into the bank account details database. If you are only being given access to the bank account database, there is no way you can get access to the organization's server containing the organization's vital information. Firewall helps enforces privileges to reduce risk, because if it doesn't enforce privileges, someone from the teller can actually access employee information from an authorized server to use it for his or her own gain. Our session will end any moment from now. We will rejoin again, then continue our session.